we have gone over selection. That's great. Pocket that away in the back of your brain. Now let's go over moving things, transformation, right? That all takes place utilizing this right here. It's called the show handle. I call it the transform tool. I don't actually know if that's the actual name for it, but I do use it all the time. So if I ever say the transformation tool, this is what I mean. In select mode, we can pick whatever we want. Now we can move things in the parameters window here. We can rotate them, scale them, as we looked at before in an earlier lesson here. But what if we want to do that in a more interactive way? We want to do that on screen. Well, by clicking the show handle, it is going to, believe it or not, show us the handle. You know, you can move on all the different axes, the X, the Z, the Y. You can, move it two at a time. You can move it all three. You can rotate. You can drag one of these up top and rotate on two different axes, like all the different transformations you'd hope to see that just make for a much more interactive experience. Now, quick side note. This underneath here, this section of magnets, these are the snapping tools. I'm not going to go into them too much. Just be aware, make sure this is not on, because what you'll get is a very strange situation where it's trying to snap it to the ground plane when you're moving it around your scene, right? Which gets for weird results, right? It's trying to snap it. It's causing all sorts of problems. So if you're having like weird glitchy issues dragging it around, it's probably some of the snapping tools that are active, although I don't believe they're active by default, so you may be fine. These are the same transformations, by the way, that you're seeing in your parameters, so it just depends how you want to do it. Calling it the handle node is a little disingenuous, even though that's its legal name, it's its birth name, because the handle tool is very important. You are basically going to live between the select tool or the handle tool. The handle tool needs to be active in order to use any sort of interactivity with any node, right? Without it being on, you will not see the important things, essentially the handles, I guess, that you need to interact with in order to make changes, right? I'll give you an example of that makes a little more sense. If we go into the sphere here, the sphere by default, you can see there's a box around it. If we're in select mode, we're selecting our points, we're selecting our faces, etc. If we're in transform mode, we've got our handles, which we might expect, but we also see this bounding box. You see, each node that we create is designed differently. At the end of the day, each node is basically just a collection of code that's been built up with a nice wrapper on it for us to access. The creators of these nodes have designed tools that are interactive for us in the viewport. Those tools are only visible if the handle tool is active. If you are in select mode, take this for example. The sphere node by default gives you interactivity not only to rotate it and transform it, but it also wants you to be able to scale it in different ways, holding shift to scale both sides, top and bottom, If you want to make these scale changes, but you have the select tool active, you can't do that. There's no way. In order to see the tools that are accessible in this node, you must have the handle active. So to further illustrate this point, let's create a different type of node entirely. We're going to hit tab and type in clip. If we shift enter, it will create it and attach it to the node we had highlighted earlier. The clip works, well, exactly as advertised. It clips the geometry, right? It starts by default clipping on the y-axis, anything that is below. Which you can see in the parameters here. It says keep primitives above the plane, and then it shows you the plane. If we're in select mode though, you're not seeing anything, right? You have no access to the tools that the designers of the clip node built in for you to access and work with. So if you ever don't see the tools and you have the node selected, you're going, what the heck is going on? It's because the handle tool is not selected. The minute that you hit the show handle tool, now you have access to what they designed. You'll notice the handle on this is not the handle that you see in the sphere node, right? If we highlight the sphere node, we've got a traditional handle. We've got the rotation, the positional shifts. Now we do have this box, which is not traditional, but this is also, in a way, a handle. It's the custom handle for this node in order to interact with it and make changes as you want to change it. So we see in this scene view window, now we see this ground plane visualizer and this that we can use to rotate, or we can use to drag it up. We can make changes interactively. We can also make changes, obviously, in here, but this is more interactive. This is more artist-friendly, so to speak. You'll also occasionally get pop-ups on screen, like we can see clip distance here, that we can click and drag as well. More interactivity. So we've got interactivity in the viewport. Now, let's hit tab and type in UV flatten. Don't worry about this node at all, but drop that down. And look, with the select tool active, you are again able to select geometries you might expect. With the handle tool active, it changes the entire interface. Because again, this is what the designers of this node want to set up for you in order to interact and interface with this particular node. You've got to change to the actual interface itself, but you've also got additional parameter tools above the scene view, right? These disappear when I switch between nodes. Now, speaking of handles, we've got our handle tool active. We want to make changes. We've got the big handle here, but what if we only want to make changes to the translation, or just to the rotation, or just to the scale? Let's say this is a bit finicky and we don't like to deal with that. If we hit T as a shortcut, that will give us our translation handle. R will give us our rotation handle by itself, and E will give us our scale handle by itself, which is maybe just a little nicer to interface with. Just remember that. E for scale, R for rotation, and T for translation. So we've covered selection, we've covered transformation. We haven't really talked too much about creating nodes, right? I've shown you the tab approach, but there are many other ways to do that same thing. But first, a little bit of context here. Context being literally the perfect word, because there are lots of different contexts in Houdini. And what I mean by that is the OBJ level is different than the SOP level, as we've talked about, right? Surface operation, that's where we do all our things to build our object. And then the object level is where we kind of set our scene and our light and our camera and all that good stuff. Different contexts exist as organizational boxes for different activities, right? We've only covered two so far, the object level and the SOP level. But one important thing to note is that the context dictates what nodes are available, because nodes are designed to work on different things. And in order to work on those specific things, they have to be in that specific environment. So, for example, if you click on the network view while in the OBJ level and you hit tab, you will get a list of all the different subcategories of nodes that exist inside of this context. Now you'll notice there's a lot, but not that many, right? You'd expect to see more than this. Well, that's because these are only the nodes that work on this level, in this context. If you create a geometry node, this is going to be an empty shell, and we double click to go inside of it, and then you hit tab in there. Well, now look, we've got whole new worlds of nodes and possibilities, all of these designed to work on the surface, essentially, of the object. Now, just so it's covered, there are plenty of different contexts. If you click and hold on this little icon by the OBJ here, you will actually see that there's lots of different contexts. And each of these will take you into its own little world, inside of which there are new, unique nodes to use. We will eventually traverse the majority of these. But for now, we're going to stick to the OBJ level and a subset of the OBJ level, which is the SOP level, right? Let's highlight and delete the sphere. And let's say we don't want to hit the tab method in order to create it. We want something different. Well, up at the top left, there is what's called the Create tab. And here we'll find, oh look, a sphere. If we click on this, now in our interface, we have a more interactive way to create a sphere. By clicking sphere, it still hasn't created the actual sphere yet. We can pick where in the world that should be. If we hover over here and click, it will realize it in that location in 3D space. If we want it in the middle, we can click and just hit enter, and it will create it at the exact center of our world, what's known as world space, the 0, 0, 0 of our world, X, Y, Z, 0. I'm done saying 0 now. Point is, we've got our sphere, and the internals are the exact same, right? So if we hop back up here, we can see it has created our sphere. There's also another way. If you click on the scene view, again, just a reminder for the names here, we can see scene view on the top left of this tab. So this is how we know this is the scene view. But if we click on the scene view and hit C, essentially create, it will open up a radial menu that we can use in order to create a sphere. Now here we've got a lot of different options for a lot of different use cases, but I know we want to create geometry and we want to create a sphere. So we click and look, we're right where we left off. If we hit enter, we've created it at the center of our world again. So there is the tab method, there is the shelf method, and there is the radial pop-up method. Now it is worth noting, we're dealing in creating geometry, but this is really more about creating nodes than it is creating geometry as we know it. Because if we explore this top shelf area, there's lots of stuff going on. Look, we can create box, sphere, tube. We can create a null, line, spray paint, so many different things. If we move over to the modify tool, which is, believe it or not, for modifying geometry, well, look, we've got very helpful nodes like a duplicate node or a copy to points node that we'll look at later. A delete node, We can affect the model directly if you want to sweep along a curve or you want to scatter onto geometry, you know? All of these tabs contain different tools that are the exact same tools that you can create if you are in the right context, hitting tab and typing it in. This is more for, if you can't remember the name of something, this tool is here with helpful icons that will help you. I personally do not use this very often, but I want you guys to know this is here in case you need it, right? There's also this little plus icon at the bottom. These are the shelves that are not shown by default. But for example, I have a Grayscale Gorilla tool installed that I like to access every once in a while. So if I click this, it's going to actualize that shelf tab for me. So in this way, I can customize my own shelf to be more useful to me. Now, since we're already in the attic exploring the shelves, why don't we mosey on to the right? This is what I call the danger zone over here. A lot of these tabs contain final results. If we click Flip Fluid from Object in this tab, in the Particle Fluids tab, nothing happens. But what we do get in the scene view at the bottom here in blue text, an option to select object to convert into a flip fluid. Press Enter to accept the selection. So we can now pick our object. I'll click on this sphere and it says to hit Enter. Okay, I'll hit Enter. And what it does is creates an entire series of nodes. It creates an entire setup to create flip fluids. So the final thing that we get, I'm going to turn off the grid here for visibility, but the final thing that we get is, look, it's a simulation of particles, right? It has set up all these nodes for us and these systems for us in order to create a flip fluid simulation. Now, on the surface, that sounds great, right? It's like, oh, yeah, shortcut. Get it out of your brain. I want to show you the gun safe so I can lock it in front of you and say, you are not allowed in there yet. You're too young. We are going to unlock this section at the very end of the tutorial series. The reality is, you should know how the sausage gets made. Okay, so every branch of Houdini that we explore, I want you to understand the fundamental building blocks that go into that specific thing before you touch the shelf tools. The shelf tools really are useful when you are able to dive in and explore how these things are constructed. Because at that point, you will already have the knowledge you need to make the tweaks necessary to actually make a useful system. Right out the gate, you are not going to know what does what, and it's all going to be overwhelming and ugly and lonely. Speaking from experience, by the way. So I want to make sure you are trained up before entering this area of the dojo. For me, I like to keep it simple. I don't use the radial menu. I don't use the shelf tools. I just hit tab and I type what I want. Or, God forbid if I forget, I do venture up into the shelves to the area and I find something that will jog my memory. Besides that, I tend to stay away from the shelf tool area. I just want you to know that that's there. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more, head to doublejumpacademy.com/Jordan for the full course. Links in the description. You're just a click away. Click it.